turns out I was wrong. Didn't break the lock. Broke the thumb studs, weirdly. But yeah, there you go. Spindle lock, man. That was 400 pounds. And, well, it's gonna need a new spindle because it's, obviously it's a still soft spindle, but there you go. Pretty durable. This is after the weight test. Alright everybody, so as you saw in the previous video, the spindle lock took about 400 pounds before I had a parts breakage, and even at that, it wasn't the spindle that broke, it was actually the thumb studs. They sheared off of the blade. As you can see, there's a little hole there, a little deformation on that. It's partially because I am actually using annealed parts to do my testing here, so unfortunately I don't have a hardened blade yet. I do send out, it's one of the few things I do send out for. I send out for heat treating, and so because of that I have to kind of get economies of scale. But anyway, long story short, I have an annealed blade, and I've got an annealed spindle. The spindles are made out of 440C. When they get hardened, they're going to be typical hardened 440C, you know, 56, 57 Rockwell C. And of course the blade is going to be CPM 20 CV. So on this particular blade though, as you can see, even despite the fact that this has been really pushed on, you can see there's a little bit of blade play. That is because the spindle is bent. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show you how easy it is to change the spindle on the knife. This is one of the, I call it a key synapomorphy. That's a SAT word for you there. A synapomorphy is a differentiating factor between two species. And I call this the key synapomorphy between an axis lock and the Moon spindle lock. And one of the big differences and why this is so much easier to maintain. Now you'll notice I just removed a screw off the outside of the knife. There are plungers underneath of that which actually plunge into the frame, and there is a spring behind each one of those. So it's really easy to change out the spindle, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to take our new spindle here, and I'm just going to use the old one as basically a slave pin. You screw in the old thumb stud, for want of a better term, and we're just going to press it through. The new one's in there, and I do have to make sure that I have this old spindle kind of depressed just a little bit, and then we can just press it through. And it does help if I'm able to depress this little plunger, simultaneously not bending my spindle. There we go. So there's the new spindle, and I really should have brought a wrench or something. There we go. We want to take that old screw. Now you'll notice there's a fair amount of deformation there. Now, one of the things, and I know some other people have asked, well, okay, so what is this, just a threaded shank? No, it's not. There is threading on either side of this, and this is important because it keeps the middle from being crushed. This actually has a solid center, so it can't go any further than that. There's a solid center in the middle of this, this tube, basically. And you'll notice, man, there has been a lot of force on that because it has just been deformed. Now, the beauty here is, again, you just saw me change the spindle in, what, 30 seconds or so. We just screw this back in, and, you know, we have solid lock. Now, there's a little bit of play there, and again, that's because this blade is annealed. Now, if this was hard, there would be no deformation, but there's almost no play at this point. So I would easily, you know, with this being hardened, I'd say this is definitely going to hold up. 400 pounds. It's a lot of weight. But I do want to show you the full-on takedown of the spindle lock, because it's important to take a look at that, you know, the maintenance aspect of this, but it's also a good idea to see how this thing goes together. This is a little different from an axis lock, and again, I know some people have asked, like, isn't that just an axis lock? No, it's not. The axis lock, first off, that is trademarked. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about axis locks, but I'm just going to talk about it because you know that this is a little different when you see this whole setup here. This is what makes it different. The Axis Lock uses Omega springs. They're basically a spring that's basically a straight piece of wire that is in an Omega shape that coils around and hooks onto their Axis little bar there directly. It actually connects to it. This actually floats, and so there's no direct connection. That's why I can push it straight through. To disassemble the spindle lock, you just you remove it with a T15. And then there's a couple little guide rods, these little plungers, and they just basically fall out. At this point, the spindle will just come off, and then you can just take them out. And there are springs in there. Now, those are easy to drop in, and if you move them like this, you can just see the springs come forward, and you can easily remove the springs there. 1, and then 2. Just good because they're being cooperative. And at this point, there's nothing putting force on the blade, so I mean, it's just totally smooth. Now, again, this is a big difference from an Axis Lock. If you wanted to take apart an Axis Lock, it mechanically work completely different. Now, let's do a full takedown of this knife. So again, you can see kind of what's different and what's not. We're going to find out whether or not I need 2 screws, or 2 screwdrivers. These are all titanium screws. Moon knives now come with full titanium screws and titanium pocket clips. I used to use G10 for pocket clips. Good material, lightweight, non-scratching. A lot of people just really want titanium for one reason or another. The frame here is made out of G10, but that can be made out of any kind of reasonably structurally sound material. So Texalium, carbon fiber, any of that stuff. And these just push out just like that. Super easy to do. And at this point, all we got to do is take our pivot, loosen that up. And we can push that through if we're interested. And this just twists over, the blade comes out, and then we have all of our small parts. Just dump them out. So, last little stainless steel. So the spring clip retainers here for the springs are made out of 6AL 4V titanium. This has a 3/16 of an inch thick pivot, solid steel, stainless steel pivot. I'm sorry, not pivot, stop pin. And then what's actually giving the knife its strength when you put pressure on this. That spindle is going straight through these spring clips. There's 2 1/10 of an inch thick, so cumulative 1/5 of an inch of titanium that it's locking up on either side that are giving it cushion, and those are protecting it from deformation. Now this has sacrificial stainless steel races on it for the bearings. All of them come with ceramic bearings in it, and then of course you have your 3/16 inch thick pivot. When you assemble this, the assembly looks like this, where you basically would stack everything up. You don't even put the springs in until after we've got everything put back together. So we'd put the blade back together. You'd put your ceramic bearings on here. And before we close this up, I do want to show you how the pocket clip is attached using PIM nuts. Now this can go on either side of the knife because the knife is ambidextrous. When you order your knife, you can order it either left or right-handed. This is the right-handed version where it's drilled and it's got PIM nuts pressed in for the right-hand side. You can order it left-handed where it goes on the other side. If you want to, you can also order an ambi version. So it would basically have PIM nuts drilled and tapped for both sides. Now on this side of the frame, there is actually a little machined-in recess for the jelly bean that the pocket clip sits on. Again, this is the same pocket clip that came out of the Stormcrow, so it actually basically fits right on. And you'll notice there are some similarities between the new knife and the Stormcrow. They're different platforms entirely because the new one is actually designed from the ground up to be a spindle lock and also take a Wharncliffe blade, which is something that everybody was kind of lamenting about the Stormcrow. Like, why isn't there a Wharncliffe blade? Well, it's the frame shape. This one's a little different, so it can actually take a Wharncliffe. But I wanted to show you that's how the pocket clip attaches, just 2 PEM nuts there. You have titanium screws, they thread into that, and you have your pocket clip on top of there. Same pocket clip as the Stormcrow. So if you've got one on a Stormcrow that you want to work on the new knife, you can easily do that. And so you don't have to put any springs in when you go and reassemble this. All you do is you just stack everything up and then press it together. Now, there are a couple of little washers and things. You want to make sure nothing's bound up in here. So I like to kind of just lightly set it on there and then make sure, you know, work it back and forth just a little bit. Make sure that everything's lined up and press it together. Pretty easy to do. And then, of course, we want to take our pivot screw, put it back in. This is a T15. The spindle's a T15. The other Torx screws are all T8s. So there are no T6s in this entire knife. I know a lot of people are going to be happy about that. T6s, I don't like them. I think that they easily strip out. So all you do to reassemble this thing, you'll take your little barrel pivot shanks in here. It would be helpful if I could actually tighten my pivot up, but it's not necessary to tighten your pivot. When you go to reassemble this, you just want to make sure at some point that it actually does go back in correctly and has the right tension so that it's centered. Then you'll just place all these in. All right, we're going to give this a shot. I will say this is actually kind of hard to do. So if you don't have the plungers in, there's a reason why I was using it as a slave pin. This is the hardest part of the entire knife to reassemble. You need to make sure that you get this, basically the little plunger in there, and I will say this is legitimately difficult to do. Sometimes it helps if you can basically put a, yeah, there you go, a Torx bit through there. Once you get the first one in, like, the battle's over, because at that point it's pretty easy to actually get the second one in. But this is the hardest part of the entire assembly process. But once you get it down, it's not so bad. It just takes a second to get used to it. But I will say it's a heck of a lot easier than an Axis lock. So once that's in, you know, all you do is you take your spindle lock screws. Now, of course, you do want to make sure that you keep these tightened. Otherwise, you know, they might come out. At that point, we have a locking knife, and this thing is pretty darn solid. Again, I just hung 400 pounds off the end of this knife and replaced a spindle on it, and it's basically good to go, and all these parts are annealed. So once it's hardened, we're talking about some absolutely insane strength on the lock on this knife. I know Benchmade, the Axis lock, is a very, very, very strong knife design. I mean, I'm not knocking the Axis lock. It's actually an extremely good design. This is an evolution of that design, and in every respect, it's kind of demonstrably better. Again, I'm not knocking Benchmade's locking mechanism. It's an excellent locking mechanism, but the spindle lock is the better version of that because it's a lot easier to maintain, to repair when it's, you know, if it ever breaks, it actually has some maintenance ability, which is kind of nice. At this point, even better. There's no play now. Really, really impressive stuff. I have spine whacked the living daylights out of this. I'll sub some video in where you can see that. You know, I've hung 400 pounds off of it. I have every confidence in the world in this lock. It's really good. So this knife is not quite ready for order yet. When it does go on sale, it's going to be on my website, www.willmooncustomknives.com. Look for it sort of middle of September 2018. Today's like the 4th of September, so we're almost there. I just want to make sure that this gets a really good carry test in my own pocket before I put it out, so that I know that it's going to, you know, hold up. But I mean, I just hung like 400 pounds off the knife itself, and I think it's going to be pretty freaking durable for people. I've spine whacked the living daylights out of it. I'm not calling it a hard use knife because I think that term's really overused. It usually kind of gives people license to do stupid things. Like, it's like the term YOLO, right? I just think that people just say YOLO so they can do dumb stuff. But anyway, long story short, these are going to be for sale at www.whalemooncustomknives.com. If you want to see what the options are going to look like, basically go over and look at the Stormcrow order page, and all those options are going to get carried forward onto the new knife. Base price for this is going to be $500. That money is basically going to buy you a hand ground, hand finished CPM 20 CV blade, a G10 frame, color your choice. Again, you can upgrade the materials if you want. Titanium screws, ceramic bearings, and these are all going to come with a custom handmade, hand embroidered case. These are my new cases, making these in-house, which is really cool. And the cool thing is they can get matched to your knife. So this one's got blue and silver and black, and I can match your case to your knife. For example, here's a Stormcrow here. This is a purple and black Stormcrow. And so I was able to match this Stormcrow to its case. Here's a Mark 9 that's kind of silver and green, and so I'm able to match this Mark 9 to its case, right? So when you order one of these new knives, the new model, that's going to come with a really nice suede hand embroidered zipper case for it that'll match your particular knife that you order. Again, made in the United States, because I didn't want to buy overseas produced just China cases. I wanted to build everything in this knife here in the US. It's important to me. This is US made, out of US materials, on US machines at a fair price. And I think that it's a really good value for the money. Again, I'll update you guys, keep you updated and stuff with new updates on, that's very redundant, on the new knife, and make sure that it goes up on YouTube. Thanks for watching, everybody. Certainly appreciate the business. See you later.